It's an Alex.
I unmuted the...
What?
I unmuted the wrong thing. They missed the entire taps thing. That was a beautiful moment. I'm just... Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, I'm a good producer.
How's it going?
Not.
We're gonna...
Could you not? You're gonna give me a heart attack again. Thank you for telling me that there's no sound.
There's sound now.
Luckily, the moment of remembrance for the Night Castellan, I guess, happened in perfect silence, which is still inappropriate. For those of you who missed it, I was trying to play taps off my phone into it.
It was good.
Anyway,
There was sobbing in the background, actual sobbing.
It was like hitting Oscar.
It's true. It's true.
So, tiny bit of housekeeping. Planes of War exists. You should go to it. Hotel code is Planes of War at Holiday Inn Airport Polo Park. Thank you for your sponsorship. You get 30% off. Follow us here on Twitch and join the Discord server to be entered for a 25% off discount voucher for your Planes of War ticket. Thurston's excited. I'm not going to ask him to repeat his answer again because that would be cruel of me. We've got a lot to talk about today. There's an FAQ that dropped, I'm told.
My God, is there an FAQ that dropped? It's this morning, too. Everyone was off by a day because we had one day left. And
I had it pegged for, between 6 p.m. and midnight Sunday.
Yeah.
Because Games Workshop is that far ahead of us, and they would have been, wanted to be at the top of the feeds Monday morning. But I was off by about 12 hours, which is...
And it kind of got usurped because they put up the FAQs before the news post, so I guess they were quickly uploading all the files. And someone noticed the first one because they had to go through them all, and it was all over. And by the time people were linking all of that, I finally saw that they updated the news post, and it was really weird because they have 3 different layers to this FAQ. So
yeah. Clinky304 requests if we could turn the sound off again. He was having more fun. I'm sorry. I wish I could bring myself to do that, although that is a missed opportunity because we had an episode April 1st and I really should have just left it on mute the whole time.
Missed opportunity. My two least favorite words. Trust me, if you are a game developer, those are the 2 worst words you will ever hear strung in a sentence.
That's entirely fair. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Stuff.
I'm gonna click a button and show people some of the stuff. We're gonna go to Knights first.
Wow. Okay.
Rotate ion shields capped off at 4++ on the invulnerable. No longer will that steampunk toddler, have an infall save of 3++.
Yeah.
And there's been points added to the Plasma Decimator and Volcano Lance to bring them up so that it's about an even 100 points more.
Yep.
Does this kill the Night Castellan in your eyes?
Just the 100 points alone is a hit. The capped invul save is another massive hit. The other thing that has not been quite as talked about is the increase on the strat for it now, because that has gone up if you're using that ion shield strat is 3 now for a Dominus instead of the 1 base.
Yes,
and on top of all of that, the other thing that I think puts these finally at the last stake in the heart. Because prior to the Castellans really overtaking the meta, there was a very strong resurgence of Smash Captains, which we all love and know as our Blood Angels / pick your Space Marine variety captain with...
Hello, Michael.
Yeah, exactly. But they were nerfed pretty hard in their close combat capabilities because of Fly being nerfed in the assault phase. That has since been rolled back a bit, which means those Smash Captains can now hit something like a Castellan a lot easier. And I've heard a lot of people say, well, you're just bad if you were playing to a point where your Castellan was going to get hit by them. But even with that as a potential, this is just another vector that these big stompy knights are going to die. And so between all of the nerfs and that, we weren't seeing them a lot anyways because people were already kind of feeling which way the wind was blowing and gravitating away. I can honestly say I have never played against a Castellan opposite me, but I could tell you most of the awful things that they do. And now that's just not on the table anymore. So
yeah. What do you think rises up to take their place?
See, that's interesting, because I think we should go through some of these other items here because that's going to inform some of what's getting picked up. I mean, like we look at some other like big contenders here. Like going through our little list here. Next up was like the biggest Gene Slater cult thing was the change to Mental Onslaught.
I can hit that button right now.
Yeah.
Look, it's the magic button.
Oop.
Woo! We've got the text for the new Death Grip and Mental Onslaught stratagems on the screen right now, both of which now have a chance to just be aborted to end if your opponent rolls a 6 at any point.
So I've been a firm opponent of how Mental Onslaught works since I saw it, because I'm a very firm opponent to anything that is not super interactive or is interactive in a way that just seems clunky. And I know we certainly have clunky mechanics in this game, but the case in point I will always use will be when I walk it in on Dustin Hine playing Logan, two of our local really solid players. Yep, and they were engaged in a mental onslaught on a repulsor tank that Logan had, and Logan had a basically 5-up feel no pain on the repulsor, and because of how the leadership values of that psychic power worked, and for those of you who are not familiar, the psychic power is essentially roll off, add that to your leadership. If yours is higher, you take a mortal wound, or the thing you're targeting takes a mortal wound. And generally this is coming out on a Patriarch, who you can buff up leadership, and then you can take some Tyranid Gribblies to lower the enemy leadership. The way it worked out when I saw it, and this isn't even the worst that it could be, but the way I saw it was Logan had to roll a 5 or 6, and Dustin had to roll a 1 or a 2 in order for that to even out. And it was this back and forth dice rolling game that, I kid you not, went on for like a good 5 minutes of back and forth before they finally ended it. And that's in a situation where like Logan had a chance to stop it. If just like a few more leadership debuffs and like buffs, and suddenly like you could theoretically in the game take a knight down to a leadership where it could never succeed. And you would just instant murder it because you would go through it, would never. Now, because they've said if you roll a 6, that stops that, that's great because that gives you as a player a chance to roll that hard 6 and stop it. So if you've got something that is 28 wounds, well, over the course of 28 dice, knock on wood, you're going to get 1 6, like, at a decent point in that process. It's also going to let you, as a player, decide, like, oh, yeah, I really need to throw a reroll at this because extra dice early on is going to be a huge help.
Yeah, and rerolls, I think, in the situation you described between Logan and Dustin, would have added to the decision-making time and the time that whole thing takes to resolve.
Well, and if like in that case, if Dustin rolled a 3 or higher, like it wouldn't have mattered. But now that dice will always matter. So yes. It just brings up such an increased element to play, and it does make it look like something as a player you can stop. Like very much, I stop it on a 6. And then the leadership comes into play for everything else. I like that. I think it's a solid, elegant fix. I know before they were talking about things like, well, maybe we give it a wound cap or something like. No, this is a way more elegant fix. It still includes that kind of jumpy randomness, but also means that there's a game to it with the dice, which is nice.
Like there's that, so you're saying there's a chance moment.
Exactly.
I have to eat a little bit of my words because I know I've said on this podcast, I wish I had old copies of our scripts that I could actually eat the words. In the past, I have been like, well, isn't that like a small enough eye of a small enough needle to jump through that it's okay if you have to have these 16 units and get off these 3 powers, then it's fine. But ultimately, like, it lacked that, so you're saying there's a chance moment. You never want to create those game situations where players feel like things are hopeless. So I think, I could roll a 6. No matter what, I could roll a 6. You're saying there's a chance. And
in a game where it's all about can you roll a 6 or can you roll that, important number, something like this is great. And all 10 out of 10 on that choice. In fact, most of these FAQs, I think, most of the things that have come out of this FAQ, I'm really in favor of.
We're going to get more into that in a moment. Quick question before we leave this helpful info screen that I spent maybe 5 minutes preparing. Did you ever actually see anybody use the Death Grip stratagem for Knights?
I think I have seen someone who has that Thunderstrike gauntlet like all of once in my life on a table. I think we're going to see a lot more, though. because now that the Castellan isn't the be-all, end-all, you'll probably see some other variants of knights, and so it's nice. I mean, I never particularly saw the Death Grip, so but hey, consistency is nice.
Yeah. In the chat, we've got people saying that the things that they expect to show up now that the Castellan is perhaps gauche. Primarchs,
Yep.
T7 vehicles,
Yeah.
regular knights.
I mean, my Mortarion is like 2 of the things in this FAQ suddenly have me kind of like, ooh, I could do a list with Mortarion again, and he could be kind of reasonable and like actually so. Hey, that great unclean one might even come out again. That is super exciting for me.
Yeah. And I know that, like, again, as people who watch regularly know, I am buying into Custodians. I haven't gotten the game yet. Will soon. Like, I've got Telemons that are, on the way in the production line on a Forge World. And do you think, like, they get better? The producer Josh asks selfishly.
Oh, yeah.
Because they've got, like, that 2-up, 4-up involve, 6-up feel no pain, and, like, the firing. Do they have more of a presence now? Should we see more Dreadnought level units?
I think like Telemons are sort of this weird high point. They aren't quite as affected by the Castellan because of that presence of a strong invul. I think where this is really going to shine are rhinos, chimeras, tanks of all sorts that don't get those saves, that it was just like, oh, hi, dead. Things like Primarchs were suffering too, because it gave such a central target. Telemons are going to fill in that same role, but I think the real winners here are a lot of those mid-level tanks, those non-Lord of War tanks that just, you look at a Castellan the wrong way and you're dead.
Yeah, the stuff that the Castellan was limiting so many other lists from choosing, that mid-range vehicle slot.
And the disappearance of the Castellan is also going to, I think, not only influence that, and I think that was the biggest meta influencer it had, was that kind of like multi-wound, high armor sort of thing, high toughness sort of thing, which it would just eradicate. I think the other thing that not a lot of people have talked about that I think is going to be a big influencer is going to be, you won't have Castellans using those character sniper missiles anymore.
Okay.
And we were seeing that, and you tagged in a Vindicare or 2 with that, and an Imperium player was just picking off characters. And then you look at things like the new Eliminators for Primaris and all of these things that can just really pinpoint, pull out characters. With those missiles gone, because you aren't going to see the Castellan as much, and going into what Assassins got just in a bit, you're really going to see that, like, you need to focus on sniping if that's what you want to do. That's why I think the Eliminators are going to still have some presence. I think there's going to be some interesting counters to that as well, but we'll get to that in a bit.
Nice.
Yeah.
Professor Grant says in that battle with Logan, he stopped it with a reroll. So rerolls did play a role.
Yeah, absolutely.
Clank 304 says, "Yep, it hurts," in reference to the Death Grip stratagem. Had it kill Ahriman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, funny enough, Ahriman's going to be one of those characters where a lot of Imperial lists to deal with him were using those missiles off the Castellan. I saw so many tournament games and like major events where the Castellan was hurling a missile at Ahriman just to make sure that they got him off the table because of that psychic presence, and that's not going to be there anymore. So,
Professor Grant says, "I get half my codex back." We surprise. So moving on to, I think probably the other reason that you're excited, Mortarion, and people like him might have more of a presence in this, Flyers. Flyers received 2 major changes. We've got the new existence of the aircraft keyword. If a unit can fly and it has a minimum move characteristic, or it has a damage table on its data sheet that does, that unit gains the aircraft keyword. Whenever a model makes any kind of move, it can be moved within 1 inch of enemy aircraft and can be moved across such models and their bases. As if they were not there, but it cannot end the move on top of another model or its base and cannot end within 1 inch of any enemy units. If when a unit is selected to move in the movement phase, the only enemy units that are within 1 inch of it are aircraft, then it can still make a move. And this affects their charging too. We've got, well, I'll get to that in a second, but first, we've talked in this podcast ahead of the drop of this pack how the potential changes to Flyers blocking movement
It's huge.
Could affect the game.
It's huge.
Did you see this in Highlander? Have you seen this in the tables in the last 6-8 months?
I have. host Kyle, who has messaged me and said he will not be able to make it, but host Kyle was playing that list pretty strong with a large flyer presence. I got to play it against with my Mortarion, and I don't necessarily think these flyer changes are what's going to impact my Mortarioning. There's another thing related to these flyers that will. But what I will say is that I was really fearful of these type of flyers, and I played Kyle in one test game where he certainly used them in a way to try to block and funnel me, but that was for Highlander. I had my Toads. Toads can fly. Who'd have thought? But against like the list matchup that I saw that was very common for this, and I think was the most egregious example of why GW needed this kind of rule, was Orcs. I was seeing so many pictures of tables and tournaments where the 200 like boys Green Tide list fought 6 Eldar flyers, and the Eldar player basically went whoop in like a semicircle around their deployment. New Yorks couldn't go through it. They couldn't do anything. They can't shoot them. Like, it was bad. And so I think that this is a huge fix for that in a lot of ways. Do I think it's going to solve every problem with flyers? No. I mean, whilst it's a big fix and certain units are going to really benefit from this, there's some unit types that I think are going to suffer, like slow speed infantry, for example. You look at an oval base, like a flyer oval base, and you've got to add an inch on either end because you still have to be outside of an inch of it. That's a lot of movement that you have to clear. And if we're talking something like a big unit, like my Plague Bearers, whilst I'm going to love this and do all sorts of wacky shenanigans, I'm still not going to be able to clear that with a whole unit under most circumstances, unless I'm starting like just over an inch outside of it at start. Like, this is going to prevent that Eldar player from moving it just a millimeter outside of 1 inch.
Yeah.
And, well, flyer players, it's Eldar, you know who you are. Just parking it right outside and then being like, haha, you can't move at all. Where this is still going to be a very tactical thing is you still can't end within that inch. So that's a big bubble that you can still deny. It's just not I deny you from the outset, which is huge.
I deny you the entire field. Making sure that everyone feels like they have a chance, that their choices aren't necessarily limited by, weird arcane rules.
Yeah. And now, speaking of weird arcane rules, we were having a talk about this, and one of the things that I'm very curious about, because of how these new rules work, is I will use, for example, the army I have most been looking into right now, which is Slaanesh. Very fast-moving army. So say I go past a flyer, and there's something on the other side of that flyer, and I assault it. And then I have, a conga line, per se, that goes to the back. Okay, per assault rules, you move within the closest unit. So could I then consolidate into that flyer, which I'm pretty sure you can. There might be some rules against that, but that seems very much like some of those rules that I want to drill down into in the rule book and really figure out, because this opens up a lot of different maneuvering, whereas previously with something like that, you would block them off with the flyers, and because the flyers were acting as your wall, now if you can go past the wall with, a lucky advance roll or a really fast unit, can you then kind of go back and touch them and tag them? Because a lot of the flyer stuff is about you can't declare an assault against them, but can you, are there other ways to get in? And I know I've been a big fan of this with Chaos Demons, is I summon demons into combat with flyers. And a lot of people get surprised by that, because with Chaos Demons, for example, there's no stipulation on what range they have to appear with outside an inch of an enemy. Chaos Demons don't have that. So it's like, I tag a flyer. Okay, it's engaged now. And that is a weird rules interaction, but then this rule sort of is making it more, can you do more of this now, as opposed to previously where they would just block you off.
Yeah, it's interesting because that part of the new rule states cannot end the move on top of another model or its base, and cannot end the move within an inch of any enemy units, but that doesn't prevent consolidation and tagging that.
Consolidation, demon summoning, the one I've seen a lot of, and I think this happened at the Wheat City Open, was creating a spawn.
Yes.
And you can create a spawn that is also then not in that same, and I believe it was well, Ahriman is getting turned into a spawn to do this, which is huge because you see like something that can shut down those flyers is really important. And we'll touch on it in a bit, but going to Slaanesh stuff, there's some real jank that I'm curious to see how that's going to play out.
Yep. You got some backup in the chat. Professor Grant says, yes, you can consolidate. Clanky says, you cannot declare, but afterwards it's no problem. That was me. They FAQ'd that out. So...
For... They FAQ'd out what? Sorry.
If you can fill us in the chat, Clanky, that would be great. We're going to take a second because my brain is on producer brain and I'm juggling host things. As you saw when I forgot to turn our mics on at one of the most important casts of the year.
It's fine. Here.
It's not fine.
I'll cut. It's fine. I'll cover you because you missed something on our list, which we touched on but didn't touch on much, which is assassins going up 2 command points, which like going up from 1 to 2 and then a narrative down from 3 to 2, which I'm a narrative player, but I think 99% of everyone I talk to in this game uses points because everyone wants a pretty solid locked-in game. Two command points for assassins is a great change.
Clanky states spawn was what they FAQ'd out. Thousand Suns making spawn has to be outside of an inch now.
Has to be outside of an inch, but and that's fair. That makes sense. But again, there's still some other things in the game that do not have that stipulation. I know, for example, that the demon one is particular, like with their icons, is particularly tough to balance around because generally when they're going to be summoning those extra demons, they're going to be in close combat. So it's definitely a weird thing. But something that you want to be aware of because you don't want to be gotcha'd by it. And that is definitely I didn't realize, and I've had a lot of opponents who, I didn't realize it worked that way, or you can do that. Yeah, and that was how I basically locked down my first game in Highlander. Yeah, which was just dropping a toad and engaging a whole bunch of stuff that then was like, wait, what?
Yep. That brings us to a bunch of the smaller changes, which we've got summed up on the screen right now. We're going to start in the middle because that makes sense.
True.
You cannot double up on assassins now. If you have an officio assassinorum detachment with one of each of the Imperial assassins, you cannot summon more in, because the way the new stratagem is worded, you cannot add an assassin unit to your army if you've already got an assassin unit there. So no more spamming the strat to get in a bunch, no more taking a detachment of them and then adding more through the stratagem. And the stratagem is now 2 command points instead of 1. As someone who was looking at Assassin Sideboard to the Custodes, this makes sense to me. Like, I'm not especially hurt by the up to 2 command points because sideboarding is incredibly powerful, and having that kind of an answer to any situation is so strong. That feels like a 2 command point thing to me.
I'm glad that they did this because it was dialing back what I considered to be the rich getting richer with Imperium. Assassins are... You will still see people who will have that 85-point sideboard in basically all of their lists.
It's good. I'm still willing to pay 2 command points to get that.
It's exceptionally good.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of Calidus play right now because the CP cost increase is huge.
Yes.
We're seeing... I mean, I got to fight my first one at Highlander when Corey pulled out a Vindicare against me, and I was still kind of like, "Ooh, that's a spicy meatball." The ability just to pick what you need for the situation is huge, and doing that for 1 CP was obnoxious. Two now we're in some, especially for certain armies like Custodes. That's going to be a really tough choice now because 2 CP is a lot, but you're also having to effectively make that choice beforehand anyways, because if you're putting 85 points aside, you're going to spend those CP. So.
Yeah. Metalric says, can't get 4 assassins in an army anymore. Yep. Cypher can't summon assassins anymore.
That's fair. And I know we talked briefly about the surprise assassins from Chaos. I'm glad they fixed that loophole. I mean, in a similar, we don't have it listed here, but speaking of loopholes that got fixed, Obliterators are now 115 points. They are no longer the 65 they used to be. The reason a lot of people have missed this, and this in my designer head, I'm sure this is what happened. There's actually quite a few little changes in the Chaos update.
Okay.
And I'm going to make a wild speculation, folks. I'm pretty sure that they had the Vigilus 2 and the Chaos Codex updates ready like a week or two after those codexes came out, but then they just held on to them until now. And so what we're seeing is the FAQ updates, and they only magented those, and then anything that was in the original errata didn't get magented, like the Blitz.
Yes.
And that is huge.
They have done that in the past, held off FAQs so that they can release them as batches. That makes sense.
And because of them, how they incrementally, update the versions, I'm pretty sure we're technically seeing a, Chaos 1.3 when 1.2 wasn't released. And so just be aware of that. Make sure, even if you are someone who's been really up with the game, looking through those like magenta line items, make sure to look at the other stuff, because sometimes you find a couple surprises in there. I mean, the other thing, while we're on the brief topic of chaos that I'm going to tell everyone, the Renegade Chapter's Dream is dead. If you are taking any of the like named Renegade chapters, like the Scourged or the Purge or the Flawless Host, look at those now in that FAQ, because you have to take the appropriate chaos marks. There's no more taking a Purge unit of 4 of those chain guns and shooting into close combat twice because you're Slaanesh. That's no bueno anymore. So
that makes sense. Other changes that happened in the FAQ. Speaking of chaos, the data sheets are now shared between codices. Daemon Princes or Daemon Princes or Daemon Princes. Doesn't matter if you take them from the Nurgle book or from the other types of books. They are Daemon Princes no matter what, and thus fall under the rule of 3.
Yep.
Same happens with Brood Brothers Astra Militarum units. If you've got a Brood Brothers detachment, you've got an AM detachment. The Leman Russes just count as 3 Leman Russes across the whole thing, no matter what.
Yep, that's good.
It seems fine to me. It seems fair. Like it's sensible, right?
It is, and definitely as they're doing more of these weird sort of like Gene Stealer-esque codices, and I'm sure when we eventually see like Heroes of the Imperium and that kind of stuff, there has to be some sort of container. And I was always a person who thought it was weird that a Tzeentch Demon Prince is different than a Nurgle Demon Prince, which is different from like the Chaos Codex Demon Prince. Like, it was weird.
A little bit. So this is a big one. Craft World Eldar Cypher powers only affect Asuryani units now. No more Farseers casting Doom and Drinks on Dark Eldar, on Harlequins. No more such synergies. Those are now keyworded to only work with Asuryani.
Remember when we were talking about things that would get Mortarion back on the table?
Yeah.
This was a big one. Because my first outing with Mortarion was against host Kyle's Dark Eldar mix with a Farseer who was like, Doom! Whole bunch of Dark Eldar poisoned weapons! I'm very glad to see this. I mean, those psychic powers are ridiculously powerful. And, I mean, using them with Dark Eldar guns is, like, effective and, like, obviously got me, but I don't even think that's the tip of the iceberg with it. I mean, we were seeing, like, Doom in conjunction with Haywire weapons from Harlequins, and it was just nasty. I think that these changes are solid. I also think that these play into some of the ITC changes that we're seeing with, like, mono-faction builds now. 10 out of 10.
It's sensible. Do you think we'll see more errata and FAQs down the line of these things can only work with their originating faction?
It's gonna be interesting with the ITC changes, with the ongoing soup versus mono codex fight. It's gonna be really interesting over the next 6 months to a year to see where the game sort of evolves. Because we could see it go in a direction where we have more stuff like this, where it's like, no, only your codex, only that can benefit. Or we might just see the game evolve differently in terms of how things like Legion traits and like army-wide special rules and stratagems work between multiple factions. And we're seeing GW kind of realize that, whoa, some of our multi-faction stuff kind of crazy, especially on the Eldar side. We're not talking about it today, but like Ynnari has been toned back so much now. I think that they're systematically seeing where there's problems and trying to stuff genies back into bottles madly.
Yeah, we will be talking about the Gennari Index on next week's episode of Dusty Auspex. Producer Scott will be joining us. He plays Exodite Eldar Gennari. He's going to have some thoughts on all of that. Homer Sayer in the chat says,
Hey, Homer.
CSM HQs get the Legion trait. Stay tuned. We're going to be talking about a neat thing related to that in a second. And Space Elves can kiss his butt.
Fair.
This is entirely reasonable. We like our Space Elf players, but...
I've got an army in the basement, but they haven't come out for like 4 editions.
That's legit. So, as we work our way down this list here, we get back to the assassin thing, and I'm going to ask you a question just that I'm curious about as somebody who's still relatively new to the game.
Sure.
I saw people freak out this March when the Index Assassin Warroom came out, and we saw sideboarding for Imperials. Why have I not seen people freak out over the power of Daemon summoning? Because it looks to me like that is a largely similar sort of sideboarding.
I will disagree a bit as a demon player.
No, that's why I'm asking.
Demon summoning is one of those things where there is a potential for failure, there is a potential for backlash, there is a potential for mortal wounds. There's all these, like, if you want to absolutely get it off, maybe you've got to pay some some CP to use stratagems. There's a lot of like yes buts.
It's a smaller hoop to jump through.
The Imperium one is just pay the CP, pay the reinforcement points, and bam, here you go. With the demons, there's a dice roll involved. There's positioning involved. You have to have the characters to set it all up. Then it's did you roll doubles, take wounds? Did you roll triples, God forbid, take more wounds? Did you want to use the stratagem to guarantee it? Now you're paying more. Like, there's all of these sort of layered... And don't get me wrong, summoning is a super powerful mechanic. However, it's not the guarantee of an assassin. And the reason I think the assassins are so powerful in a sense is there are 4 of them. And they all have a very specific, good, solid purpose. Like, you can look at your opponent and go, oh, I'm fighting someone with a lot of tiny, squishy characters, Vindicare. Oh, I'm fighting someone with a lot of annoying psychic powers, Kilexis. Oh, I want to mess up their CP because their CP Calidus. Oh, they've got like a billion guys on the table. I guess we'll take the Eversor because lol. That's like pretty like solid thought process to go through. Whereas with demon summoning, and we saw this at the LVO, someone had to literally have one of those hotel carts with all the models on it to really deep dive into chaos summoning.
Okay.
And I think there's just a lot of added effort in the chaos summoning compared to the Imperium, which is just plug, play, go.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's not even just a smaller hoop to jump through. It is a flaming hoop you have to jump through.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And again, you have to have like all the right stuff to do it, and like your demon that's summoning has to be the same type of... It's just a lot of ongoing things.
So, in terms of beta rules that have now been accepted, I think pretty much everybody saw this coming. Bolter Discipline, Prepared Positions, Tactical Reserves, and Tactical Restraint are now all 100% part of the rules. I don't know how much commentary that requires.
Bolter Drill got some... Bolter Discipline got some changes.
Because the vehicles are now no longer beneficiaries of Bolter Discipline.
Vehicles are no longer beneficiaries. If Death Watch want to use them, they have to fire a normal bolter profile. They can't use the special ammo with it anymore, which is totally fair. We were seeing so many Death Watch players just using this, where I think the kind of hidden gem winner, and we saw this at BrizCon on the weekend, was Grey Knight Terminators. Wow.
Australia.
Yeah, taking a pretty big tournament in Australia too. I think it was like close to 60 people. Like Paladins. Like, you know what's great? The humble Stormbolter on a Terminator frame when you have like 10 of them.
And they're firing from outside of line of sight.
Because of a psychic power. Yeah, and so that kind of stuff is like, that's a huge change, and I continue to love it because anything that gets more Space Marines on the table is a-okay by me. So yeah, we got the Bolter Discipline. The other rules, yeah, like you say, everything's pretty out there. Yeah, we've got some interesting like edge cases going on now. One thing that I am still trying to grok my head around fully is changes to how some of like the random determined weapons work. So, good example of this is the shock attack gun for orcs.
Okay.
The fact that with a shock attack gun you now roll the strength before deciding what you're shooting at, which is weird and new because normally it would have worked the other way around. Similar to Ludas, now you roll the number of shots and then allocate. Like, that's an interesting change.
The Luda thing to me, I don't know, that makes sense because I'm so used to seeing that from Flamers. Flamers have randomized number of shots. I get 5 shots, I'm going to allocate 3 to this, 2 to this.
Yeah.
What's the strength thing different?
Where I think it's going to be, like, where they've clarified it too, is something that lets the Ludas shoot again. Roll that dice again. Whereas previously, that was, 3 shots each. Okay, sweet, now I use the strat. Like, that's all sort of changed up, or at least it's my interpretation of it. It's interesting. Like a lot of these sort of fringe things, I mean, they've also changed how, like, the mobbing up rule works for orcs, and we get into some of these, like, smaller codex, well, not small codex, but, like, smaller, like, individual codex changes. There's some interesting little gems in there that I think we're going to be parsing over for a while yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Clanky in the chat adds, there was a GT in Dallas that a rubric list won. Which is interesting. We haven't seen any of those.
I swear, though, on the subject of Tzeentch, every demon player sure seems to be making room for that 5 points. I know we discussed it a while ago as to why there was a 5-point reinforcement, and I'm not sure if we discussed it live on the show, but the reason for that was discovered, which was really mind-blowing. It was dropping a unit of horrors down. And then the 5 points was there to allow for a split, because horrors can do when they die, they split into two of the smaller types. So pinks become blue, blues become brimstones. And it was done so that in Overwatch, if the horrors took a loss, you could spend the 5 points to get a brimstone, which would get you effectively 3 inches closer.
Interesting.
So you would die, split, put the brimstone down at the front, and that would get you extra distance to hit something. Not that you're doing much damage with horrors in close combat, but the idea that you can just tag something up in close combat with a deep striking unit like that, next level play is there.
A little bit, yeah. So, we've gone through most of the changes so far. I'm going to skip the edge case thing I've got here in the script because I don't know if it's all that fascinating. And we're going to get to one new tech thing that's exciting.
Oh boy.
Someone on Reddit discovered in a moment. But I'm going to ask you right now, we've gone over in detail on the show your Highlander list, where you focus on the Plague Toads from Forge World and just put a number of wounds and bodies on the table that are almost impossible to get rid of.
Yep.
How would you change that list today, seeing what you've seen?
Probably wouldn't.
Really?
So, overall, my list wasn't super affected by any of the FAQ.
Okay.
If anything, there's less things for me to be inherently worried about. I mean, the biggest thing is that the toads got a buff.
Yes. They fly. Toads can fly.
Well, no. They could always fly. No. Their buff now is they count as plague bearers, which previously they did not. And it's a very, very, very corner case buff with a character I wasn't taking before. But since they count as plague bearers, they now get buffed by the Spoilpox Scrivener, who gives them a +1 to hit and then exploding attacks on 6s. So now they're
impressive.
They're getting exploding attacks on 5s and 6s because they already got exploding attacks on 6s. So it's this whole plethora of dirty toad shenaniganery. But that I was taking a Spoilpox in my Highlander list.
Yeah.
No, overall I don't see my list changing too much. But again, Chaos Demons didn't take much of a change in this.
No, they haven't changed.
I have never been the person to take like 8 Demon Princes from different codices. I mean, I barely fit 1 Demon Prince in most of my lists. So I know a lot of people were talking about oh, they're going to have to do something about plague bearers, but nothing yet.
It's fine to
So
me. They're thriller zombies that just slowly advance across the board.
I think we're going to have to see how this meta shakes out.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of the problem with plague bearers is so many people were teching against the Castellan or had Castellans that they weren't as equipped to deal with the 120 plague bearers. Now, if you're toning that back, you're going to be focusing more on dealing with units. Okay, now the plague bearers are probably dying a bit faster. So we have to see how the meta shakes out with all this.
Which segues very nicely into my next question. Thank you.
Yeah.
What do you expect to see at Plains of War?
Oh, gosh. Well, no Castellans. Well, maybe one person's going to be cute or has like one beautifully painted. God bless you for doing that. We're still going to see assassins. We're going to see Gene Cult. We're gonna have the Eldar players scrambling to figure out what they're gonna do. That's like I feel for Eldar players in this because not because I don't think they have game. Trust me, Eldar of all varieties have game. Mm-hmm. I just think a lot of the top end competitive lists are really reevaluating what they're doing, and we kind of got the stink on the wind when all the top tier Ynnari players who were also playtesters started offloading their armies after LVO. I think that some people are going to be workshopping how to do this, and we're going to see where it goes. I think, we'll still see flyers. I think we will still see, but I think we might also start seeing more of those mid to heavy hitters like those Primarchs now. Like, again, like I don't think we're going to see Greater Demon. Like I don't think we're going to see many of the Greater Demons showing up, but tanks. We'll see Contemptors a lot more. They're starting to show up more and more. Things like the Telemon, the Orion, like all of these big things which have been kind of scared away by the Castellan, they're back on the menu. So it's post-fac is always this interesting time.
Yep. Speaking of Plains of War, quick round of plugs. We've got hotel code at Holiday Inn Airport Polo Park. Use Plains of War for a 30% discount on your room. Takes it from $180 down to $130. It's a sizable discount.
Nice.
You can follow us here on Twitch. Join us on our Discord server. Check out 40 Below Gaming on Facebook for the link to the Discord server. And you'll be entered to win a 25% off discount voucher. I said it correctly the first time this time.
My God, and this time they could hear you too.
Oh dear. Thanks.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Your support means a lot to me.
That's what I do.
For your Plains of War ticket, we've got several sponsors that you'll see present at Plains of War and helping out Northern Lights Terrain, Manitoba Models Soldier Society will be doing the paint judging. I think 7/4 might be coming out. We'll find out. Battlefoam, Best Coast Pairing, CM Engrave, I Want That Stuff, AYBOnline.com, Game Night, and Frontline Gaming. We love our sponsors. So, and yeah,
cool
for more information.
Stuff from some of our sponsors. Yeah.
All right, so new tech. Someone on Reddit made the following very interesting observation.
Yes.
Based on the new FAQ and the fact that Lords Discordant can now be part of various legions.
And get the traits.
And get the traits. So, you start with a Lord Discordant, and you give them the Flawless Host, Ultimate Confidence, Intoxicating Elixir, and Prescience abilities. That means they now have 15 Strength 10 Impaler Chain-Glaive attacks, 15 Strength 8 Bladed Limb and Tail attacks, 6 S5 Mechadendrite attacks, and 3 Strength 9 Technovirus Injector attacks, for a total of 39 attacks on a single model without rerolls like from a Demon Prince, which can increase things to like 43 attacks on a single model that's brand new. What's your reaction?
You know what? My reaction is the same as it's been with the Lord Discordant for most of the time. He's going to do really good when he does real good, but going to get shot. He's going to be target numero uno. Because something like that, you're putting a lot of your buffs and things like... that's going to die in the course of a game. Most armies are going to have enough shooting or retaliatory close combat to take it down. So I'm more concerned about the 3 Lord Discordants romping across the table at me. But again, it's going to depend a lot on what you're fighting. I think the Lord Discordant is in that weird point where it's still going to get shot, and it's going to take a lot of damage going in. I'd kind of written them off prior to the Legion traits. Gonna relook at some of that again, but I mean the the one that jumps out to me that a lot of people have talked about except for this monstrosity, has been just general, like, Red Corsairs advancing charge, like getting them in there. Because I think right now we're just in a game where getting into close combat is so important.
An advancing charge is definitely
very much
so strong. Speaking of strong and things that have high strength, I'm going to click the button. We've got new Slaanesh data sheets.
They're not strong, but
they are.
But,
I saw some, I guess 9, 10, 13.
They got one strong thing.
Okay.
It's all about the number of attacks here.
Yes. So, because of the number of things I had to get ready for the FAQ, we've got a limited number of screens for Slaanesh. But I have prepared something for your favorite unit. The Contorted Epitome. Tell us about this one, Thurston.
This thing is bonkers. This thing has, like, flat out. I jumped into Slaanesh after Highlander saying, all right, this is going to be the next year of Slaanesh. We're doing it. And then I started actually trying to build lists and going, my God, this army is awful. What was I thinking? This has changed my mind 100% in, like, so many different ways. First off, it's speed. Because I believe it's 10 or 12?
12 inches.
12-inch move character. And it's right at that lovely wound threshold where you're not going to be able to pick this sucker out.
8 wounds.
Yeah. This, and another thing a lot of people have missed about this, toughness 5, which on a Slaanesh model is high.
Yeah.
But where this thing shines is that movement speed. It's a Psyker. Unlike a Herald, it's getting 2 psychic powers a turn. It's getting +1 to cast. It's getting 2 denies a turn, +1 to deny. It's moving 12 inches. You're going to be able to position this where you need it. That +1 is going to be huge for smiting because you're going to be able to throw a smite and have a better chance of rolling that high you need for extra mortals. Like, just that on its own is pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Like, I actually think that these are, and a lot of the new Slaanesh stuff is really making Slaanesh a psychic powerhouse, which in the game, it's been kind of constrained. But so you've got all of that going on with this. So it's going to be this psychic powerhouse that's going to move up the speed. It's going to keep range with your Seekers, the cavalry, that move 14 inches. So this is only lagging 2 inches behind. Everything about this is an assault-based thing. There is no reason not to ever advance with it if you're in a Slaanesh detachment.
Yeah.
Because their loci in Slaanesh is, if you're within range of a character, it's a character, you're able to assault after advancing. So you're always going to be moving 12 plus d6 with this. You're going to be doing that, keeping up in range in your cavalry. You know, you're going to have 1 or 2 cavalry models strung behind to keep them in range, so they get to do the advancing charge. I was telling Josh, I was telling you this before, but it's like the Seekers, the cavalry, are 14-inch base. They're advancing with a d6 +1 because of an instrument, so they're potentially going 21 inches on their base move, and then they're assaulting 2d6 more +1 with a built-in reroll. Like, they're gonna rocket out the table and touch something. With this, you're now having a character that's able to keep up. You're gonna want to assault with this thing because it gets 10 attacks, 2 of which are like stronger, like I think it's like -2 AP, 3 damage or something.
Yep, at strength 6 because it benefits from its own
aura.
It's a Slaanesh ability.
Yeah. And then you're getting all of the strength 4 attacks from strength 5 attacks from the Herald. It's also a Herald. But so all of that makes it bonkers and amazing. Like, so good. But then there's one more ability on this that is probably the most defining thing.
And I think it's the one Wretch just mentioned in the chat.
Yup. It's... What did he mention?
Swallow energy.
Oh, okay. Sorry. See, I keep forgetting about abilities because this thing has so many because it's so good. Yeah. So Swallow Energy is not the one I was thinking of, but Swallow Energy is ridiculous because Swallow Energy is, do you take a mortal wound? Sweet. Ignore that on a 2+. This You wanna like come at me with your Zinch Mortal Wound Bomb? Sweet. I'll put this in the way and have 8 wounds, which I'm getting 2+ saves against all those mortals.
You're on Australia and they want to come at you with those Grey Knights? Sweet, 2 ups.
Well, mortals. So it had like all the smites or whatever. But yeah, it's like that's going to be insane. But no. The defining rule of this model, and where I think it changes the game in so many ways, is its aura ability that keeps you locked in close combat.
Horrible Fascination. If an enemy unit within 6 inches of any models with this ability is chosen to fall back, your opponent must first roll 3d6. The unit can only fall back if the total is less than the highest leadership characteristic in that unit.
So I'm gonna spell out a few things. For those of you who are not dice wizards out there, average rolls on 3d6 is an 11.
Yeah.
So average rolls means you're going to roll high enough that like very few things, except maybe a few characters who've taken some massive leadership buffs, are actually going to have a leadership above 10.
Yes.
Most things hover in that 7-8 range. So on average, you're beating that. Not to mention, one of the Slaanesh psychic powers, which is real easy to cast, is a minus leadership bubble within the same range as this ability. So you're, in theory, going to be casting that all the time with the one that you're locking in. And then you're going to hold your opponent in combat. And this is the thing that I really want to start testing, and I'm so excited for this model, for this army, because we're going to have a situation where you're going to be able to lock opponents in combat. Like Tau. How often are you frustrated by you finally survive the Overwatch on a Tau gun line, you make it in, and then in their turn they float gingerly back and shoot you? That ain't happening here.
Yeah.
And you're going to hold them. And a lot of people say that Slaanesh is just going to get shot off the table. I'm kind of in a skeptical situation with that, because once you get locked in with a couple of these supporting your locks, you're going to bear hug things the entire game, and you're going to slowly tear them apart, take what you need, stay where you need to. It's going to be a lot of like really cagey assault play, but just locking things down like that is going to be huge. And even though that this, based on power level, we're looking at like 200 points for this, this is amazingly good. And one other thing to keep in mind, there's another sort of weird ism that I don't think everyone's got right. This does not have the same line that the other models do. That indicates it's a special character. So you can take multiple of these, and I am very much looking to possibly take 2.
Yeah, no, I find it fascinating because it was fairly recently on this show we were talking about penalties for moving back and falling out of combat, because sometimes it feels like melee is at a natural disadvantage. Yeah. Why do gun lines get a chance to overwatch, but I don't get a chance to take a swipe at you as you fall away? And previously I was sort of in the school of thought, well, just let me have a swipe on you. Let me do a set of melee attacks that only hit on a 6-up. Let's mirror that. That felt right. But I really like their execution here, making it a leadership test.
And that harkens back to 6th edition, I believe, where that was the like, if you wanted to leave close combat, you'd have to make a check. But this is such a home run of a character because it's strong in pretty much every phase of the game except shooting. It's going to be defining a lot of what you're going to be doing on the table. It's going to deny some ways of character sniping that we've seen a lot, but we haven't seen a lot of counters to. Like the ignore mortals on a 2+ is just such a different thing than what we've seen. So like those people who are going to try to snipe out this character, they're going to have problems with that.
It's all those Vindicare special abilities that make mortal wounds happen.
Yeah, or just even like position smites, like demon princes and other sorts of things. And on top of all of this like toolbox that you have going on here, it's like this, I said it before, I'll say it again. This is going to be the absolute best support for those Seekers, because you're going to have this hopefully charging alongside your Seekers, getting stuck in close combat with your Seekers way up the table. And on top of that, this character is going to be giving a buff to them. It's going to be locking stuff in close combat. It's going to have its psychic powers, which it's going to have off. A lot of the Slaanesh stratagems can affect units that are in combat with a character, or within range of a character. Like, it's just so well designed. It's going to be expensive as hell. But then you look at it and it's toughness 5, 8 wounds with an invul save. It's not going to get picked out or shot a lot. Like, yeah.
Yeah, nice. Clanky in the chat says, this is the unit that you want to pilot into a flyer with. Is that accurate?
Does it fly too?
It does not.
Yeah. I mean, you absolutely like you can't. You could pile in with it. Well, you're not going to be able to single model. What you want to do is you want to lock something in close combat, like throw a demon prince into a flyer, and then have this within range.
That makes sense.
It's really good.
Professor Grant says the new Slaanesh stuff's getting the buzz. As a Tyranids player, I'm kind of with you, but I'm also kind of excited because all of a sudden I'm not using my Gene Stealers or my Nadzillas to just stomp after a gun line halfway across the map. We can actually get stuck in and have ourselves some positioning decisions alongside shooting and targeting decisions. So, like, I'm excited to see someone else step into the melee ring.
Well, and this character is all going to be about decisions and proper placement around the battlefield. Like, everything about this character is great. And home run, I want to see the final points on it, but home run. But that's not even the other stuff that we have here.
Yeah.
I will go into Shalaxi
Hellbane.
No. I'm going to go with the other
Celeste,
the Demon Prince. Thank you.
So I can call that up real quick.
Yeah. This Demon Prince is a just ridiculous, beautiful thing.
So,
which you're going to see in every Slaanesh L. I'm seeing people now who are talking about. Because I was watching Jeff Robinson do his stream in Control, and he was talking about taking just a Slaanesh detachment to get some of these things. So this is a combo Demon Prince Herald. If you've seen the model, it's like big, bulky dude, like looks like a marble statue with a herald on top with a whip. And it's really what's on the tin.
Yeah, I'll read out the stats real quick so that we're all on the same page. It's going to take me a second to try and bring it into the XSplit here. But Celeste, the Vengeful Allegiance, is 9-inch move, 2-up weapon and ballistic skill, strength 4, toughness 6, 8 wounds, 8 attacks, leadership 9, 4-up save. Shows up with a Scourging Wisp. Celeste still attacks with a Scourging Whip and Esk attacks with the Axe of Dominion. Only one of this model can be included in your army. The Scourging Whip is a 6-inch assault D6, strength user, so 4, AP minus 2, D1 weapon. That has pistols, half the pistol rules, where it can attack while it's in melee. The Axe of Dominion is a melee weapon at strength plus 3, so strength 7, AP minus 3, 3 damage per hit. And the Scourging Whip in melee is strength 4, AP minus 1, 1 damage. Make D3 hit rolls instead of 1 for each attack made with this weapon. This has demonic, this has Quicksilver Swiftness, which I believe is attacked first in melee.
First, yeah.
It's got Demonic Ritual. It's got Prince of Slaanesh. Reroll hit rolls 1 for friendly Slaanesh demon units while they are within 6 inches of the model.
It's a Demon Prince.
Locus of Slaanesh. Add 1 to the strength characteristic of Slaanesh demon units while they are within 6 inches of one or more models with this ability.
It's a Herald.
Deadly Symbiosis. The first time this model fights in each fight phase, it can only make attacks with either its Scourging Whip or its Axe of Dominion. The first time this model finishes a consolidation move in the fight phase, it can then choose a new target and resolve its close combat attacks again. But when it does so, all of its attacks must be made with the other weapon. And finally, Regal Authority. You can reroll morale taken for friendly Slaanesh demon units while they're within 6 inches. And it's a Psyker with Manifest 1, Deny 1. Chaos Slaanesh Daemon character, Herald Prince. 210 points reportedly.
Yep. And I believe, what's its warlord trait listed there?
Bewitching Aura.
Bewitching Aura. So Bewitching Aura is the -1 attack to enemies that are within, in combat with it. Mm-hmm. So this thing is also bonkers good. I will say it is not quite as good as the Epitome, but this thing is going to murder so much because, so first off, it's getting 8 attacks with both weapons, essentially. But the whip is D3 per attack. So you will get 8d3 attacks with the whip. You will then be hitting at strength 5 because it's a herald?
It starts at strength. No, that's the control that epitome.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, strength 5 because it's a herald.
Yeah, so you'll be getting like 8d3, strength 5 attacks, hitting on 2s, re-rolling. So you're just going to lay out a bunch of attacks there. And that's swing 1 with the whip. So you're going into something like orcs or like conscripts or guard. You're just going to dead.
Cuisinart impression.
Then you're going to consolidate. Now, where this gets really interesting is when you have something like a character who's hidden in a unit. So you can then go whip, murder the entire unit, consolidate into the character axe.
Yep.
Then you've got a psychic power, and one of Slaanesh's psychic powers is attack again. So you'll do that and then get another batch of attacks from that. The fact that it builds in the Demon Prince, the Herald rules, is money. Can't be targeted. It's like a Demon Prince. So you're going to surround your demonettes with this thing. And Regal Authority. Can we talk about Regal Authority here for a moment?
We can talk about Regal Authority.
Because as someone who sloopity buil pipes with my Nurgle all day long, can I tell you how amazing rerolls are for morale for demons? Oh, I'm gonna like max lose 3 demons? Sweet, I'll roll again. Do I get a 1? Sweet, I'm getting D6 back. Like, just so good to have all of that functionality built in. The fact that it's a psyker, I made reference to the make additional attacks psychic power. That casts on an 8, which is really its downfall. But say you have a character who could also have that psychic power, who could cast with a +1 bonus like the epitome, who could cast that on this feller. Money. Just so much synergy between those two characters in this. And hitting is like a big unified force with Slaanesh is just going to be brutal. This Demon Prince is another just home run of I love what it does.
Yeah.
Which I think brings us to the final of the new, well, the 2 finals of the new. Yeah. The Keeper of Secrets and Shalaxi. Now, the Keeper of Secrets has changed a bit. It really it's got a bigger profile now. It's got more wounds. It's pretty solid. What I will say is that as someone who has taken the Great Unclean One to a 1,500 point event, and in that 1,500 point event, it survived turn 1 only in 1 of my 3 games.
Oh dear.
In a 1,500 point event. I would be very much assuming that the Keeper of Secrets or Shalaxi are going to get shot off the table. And just straight out good night in most cases. Which is why I think that this type of demon is going to be prime Deep Strike material. Or summoning, even. We talked about summoning, but summoning this onto the table or deep striking it, probably going to be how you'll see it played, because the Keeper of Secrets has changed a bit. There's now different weapon options along with its base Witstealer sword. The thing that gets me about it is a lot of the sort of extra options on the new Keeper of Secrets are kind of weird. There's a ritual knife that can deal some extra mortals. There's the hand that can heal you if you kill something. Yeah. There's the lash that acts as like basically a shooting attack. And then there's the Aegis, which was kind of the Slaanesh player's hope of a shield. It's gonna live. Oh, it's only a 6+ feel no pain and a 5+ against mortals. Which,
as I wrote here in the script, Jesus saves, the Keeper of Secrets doesn't.
That's the problem. I mean, and the other thing to keep in mind, and a lot of A lot of Chaos players will feel my pain on this, but the stratagem that improves your invul save on a Chaos Demon has to be declared at the start of a shooting phase. The problem with that is I can do that, and then you're free to shoot some other unit and not care about my Keeper of Secrets. Now, I don't think that's going to happen much, but the Keeper of Secrets for the 240-ish points, depending what you're equipping it with, is going to be a tough sell in a lot of cases. The Aegis is kind of a slap in the face to me because they have a 5 warp charge psychic power that gives them a 6+++. So it's like I don't want to pay more for the Aegis because the Aegis also is the most expensive of those options. Honestly, I'm really considering just equipping mine with the whip for the extra attacks and then just... but really, I won't take the regular Keeper of Secrets. I will take Shalaxi because Shalaxi is donkulously good if they can make it into close combat.
I bought the solution so that we can see this on the screen now. There's the Shalaxi model. Let's scroll down and take a look at the data sheet.
Yeah.
We've got 2 ups to hit, 6 strength, toughness 7, 16 wounds.
Yeah.
Attacks degrade, but we've got 6 and 5 and 4 base, plus an additional 4 and 3 and 2 from the snapping claws. Leadership 10, 6 up save because it's Slaanesh. That's what happens.
That's all demons. It's all demons.
Yeah. Living Whip has those pistol rules, and it's assault 6, rank 6, AP2.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe it's the pistol rules as much, but I think you can actually attack into close combat with it.
Yeah, like it's half the
pistol rules.
It doesn't, the same as flesh hooks, the same as a couple of other things. It states the bearer can make attacks with this weapon within 1 inch of an enemy unit, and attacks with this weapon can target enemy units within 1 inch of friendly units, but it doesn't restrict what you can target. So you can be in combat and fire out of it. You can be out of combat and fire into it.
Yeah, and that second one is just always good to keep in mind because Slaanesh doesn't have a lot of shooting, but the fact it can pile on some extra shooting when you're in close combat, especially with the number of characters we're seeing now that can get these kind of whip attacks, the Slaanesh dream is to get a unit down to like 4 or 5 guys. And then whip them dead in the shooting phase and charge something else. And you've got to be aware that can happen. And just that's why those whips are deceptive in that they can be solid.
So what is it that pushes Shalaxi Hellbane up above the Keeper
read that next weapon. Read that one after the last.
Soul Piercer?
There you go.
So Soul Piercer is a melee weapon, strength times 2, so strength 12 in this instance. AP minus 4, d6 damage. Each time a wound roll of 6 up is made for an attack with this weapon, that attack is resolved with a damage characteristic of 6, and instead of d6 if the target is a character.
Yep. So, one thing that's different about Shalaxi versus a couple of the degrades profiles, you'll notice strength isn't listed there, so you're always hitting with a strength 12 attack with Shalaxi.
Yeah.
The number of attacks will go down, sure, but against a character you get a lucky 6 to wound, and bam, 6 damage at minus 4. Sweet money.
Nice.
But then we can kind of go into her abilities a bit, their abilities. The things that I would note is, much like a regular Keeper of Secrets, Shalaxi is a -1 to be hit in melee.
Yes.
The other thing that is on there that is different is, I believe it's one of the abilities is a -1 to wound rolls.
Yep, Cloak of Constriction. Subtract 1 from wound rolls for attacks made with melee weapons that target this model.
So, toughness 7, right? So,
yep.
Toughness 7. So, if you walk into anything with strength 3, can't hurt them. Like, Shalaxi is immune to strength 3 and lower attacks. Unless you've got some bonus to wound or whatnot. So, again, I run into a blob of conscripts, and, locally I've been seeing some people going, ha ha ha, conscripts, to which I go, ha ha ha, perfect meat shields. I think that there's some game there, but the other thing is if we look at the Warlord trait that Shalaxi gets, it's also the Warlord trait that lets you reroll, I believe, all hits and wounds against characters.
Quicksilver Duelist.
Yeah, so you're going to be probably 2s to wound. Like, you're going to just put on some hurt with this character.
Yeah.
Do I think that it's the best option in the Codex? No. Do I think it's worth the point cost? Maybe. It's really depending what you're going to fight. I mean, something like throwing this against a Gilliman or, anything that has like a strong number of wounds, getting just a couple 6s to wound is just going to flop dead. And sticking in combat with it is going to be so solid. Like, the other thing is that Quicksilver swiftness is great on the charge, but if Slaanesh gets stuck in to combat with things, that's where they also shine because they're always going to be striking first. So I'm super excited to try all this madness out. I know I'm going to be putting in the orders soon. And, oh boy, is my wallet crying.
Speaking of which, you mentioned earlier that you'll be taking a Keeper of Secrets model. So clearly you've got some plan for dealing with that infamous Slaanesh fragility.
So what I am seeing with this is, and again, a lot of people are talking about like, oh, they'll just get shut off the board. I think the speed that this army is going to have now is going to be bonkers, because as I mentioned with the Seekers, the cavalry, you're going to run up the table with, in theory, 20 bodies that are all 2 wounds. They're low toughness. They're toughness 3, but like 20 bodies with 2 wounds apiece with an invul save that are going to charge you. They're going to charge you unless you are sitting right at the back line, and even then you can then choose to deep strike stuff in. And with the character support you're getting, you're going to start seeing wide charges. You're going to be grabbing a lot of stuff. I do fear Tau. Tau Overwatch is terrifying, but I also feel that if you make those charges, and even if you get a handful of these attacks or these critters in, the Contorted Epitome gets in there, and we're sticking around. Like, you only have to... Like, Tau are notorious for, I'm going to have 3 units all clustered together. And if they're all clustered together and you tag 3 units, they're not going to make the leadership test on one of them, and you're going to have that, haha, I'm screened. And that's where, like, you start seeing people start to break their formations, and I think Slaanesh is going to have this weird game of, we move really fast, and their base infantry move is like 7, so you're just going to be around the table. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot different than what I'm used to, which is I'm going to sit on this objective. Actually, I'm really considering running a detachment of Nurgle and a detachment of Slaanesh and starting off there.
Thurston's excited for Slaanesh. Slaanesh is excited because it's Slaanesh. I'm excited for post-back reality and to start producing content for entirely new things. But we're going to bring this episode of the Dusty Auspex podcast to a close. Thank you for joining us. Last little bit of housekeeping before we let you go. Once again, I'm going to say it this time, and hopefully I don't stumble over my words because I speak the human words real good. Planes of War. Tickets on 40belowgaming.com. Hotel code Planes of War at the Holiday Inn Airport Polo Park. 25% discount voucher available on a random draw if you follow us here on Twitch and join our Discord server. Register on Best Coast Pairings. That way, everybody gets excited about the event. You can see
those
what's going to show up in this post-FAQ reality.
Yeah.
We'll see you there. It's our highlight of the year, and it's always, always a blast. Thurston's going to be your on-camera host. I'm going to be your stream monkey. You'll see me in the background sometimes. Start a betting thing, start a drinking game, start a bingo card. I don't care.
Great.
We've got some sponsors. Yeah. Take us down the left-hand call.
Yeah. So first off, we have our immediate sponsor, Game Night Games and Cool Stuff, who they've been hosting us for our Friday Night Kill Team league that has been going on, which has been great. They have a great gaming space. You can get all of your gaming stuff from there, be it 40K or AOS or any other board game things, whatever you want. Game Night Games and Cool Stuff. They got it. We have Frontline Gaming, who puts together the lovely ITC, and I think we're all happy with the ITC and like having that lovely tournament system. Yeah, they're great. Northern Lights Terrain by Byron, local guy who does terrain. Also movement trays, like your little movement bases. You want those? I'm going to be contacting him about some 25 mils for some Slaanesh stuff. Let's just say that's 100%. I would check out Byron's stuff. He also does like custom tokens, all that sort of thing.
Those movement trays have made my Tyranids a dream to play.
Oh yeah, exactly. Manitoba Model Soldier Society, which, if I'm correct, they're coming to do the paint judging at
Plains of War, and Twin Eagles.
And Twin Eagles. That was the other one I was missing. Thank you. Yeah. So awesome there. And then obviously the Holiday Inn Airport Polo Park, which will be our venue for the event and gives us discount room rates and all that sort of fun stuff.
Mm-hmm. And we've got more sponsors. Seventh Forge Studios out in Edmonton, wonderful commission painters. They've shown up before past of our events. They'll show up again. They've got a podcast, Favorite of Chaos. Check it out. Battle Foam. You know them, you love them, we know them, we love them. They are ridiculously present here.
Oh wait, you can.
You got the
you
top,
can see this.
topper.
You can't see the ones up there, but there's more up there too.
You spend so much time and money on these models, you want to spend a little bit more to protect them, and Battle Foam is your best way of doing that. Yeah. Best Coast Pairings. They make life sane and reasonable for those of us in the TO community, so we deeply appreciate them. CM Engrave doing all of our trophies and bits. Hey Thurston, there's a tiny little shield here with your name on it. It's gonna go on that thing.
I don't believe it. This is
spelled it right.
This is for last year too. Wow, it's fixed.
Incredible.
It's fixed. Thanks, Fabio.
So I have the 2019 one. Awesome. I want that stuff. Wonderful store out in Brandon. I'm gonna be heading out there for the Prairie Con Doubles 40K tournament, wielding my shiny Adeptus Custodes for the first time, secretly hating myself for selling myself out like a common hedonist in a hive city, but that's totally fine.
That's great.
AYBOnline.com has been kind enough to sponsor us for another year and be responsible for a lot of the streaming goodies that we use to bring this content, human words, to you. This has been the Dusty Auspex podcast. He is Slaanesh's latest tea tonight, Thurston. Yep. The internet calls me producer Josh, and we're going to, if you're not rolling ones, you're cheating. We'll leave you with this.
Goodbye. Not really. So bad. Nope. Deserved it.
It was fun to hate, though, right?
What else are we gonna hate now? We can't even hate Eldar. What are we gonna do?
I don't know.
People can't hate demons. That'd be bad.
No.
You know, Custodes. Custodes look pretty awful. Let's all hate on Custodes now.
It's a fair cut. Hey, just move a little bit left. Those Grey Knights, they won that thing down in Australia. Can we hate that?
Oh, sir.
It's been so delicious.
Cold.
Cold, like the cold anti-psycho hearts?